My expectations for A Quiet Place were pretty mediocre. I thought the trailers were really good. The thing that heightened it were the reviews. Of course, we don't get to see movies really early like most people who review them, so I had heard that it was such a great film, so that heightened my expectations. And even at that point, my expectations were pretty high. It far exceeded them. This movie, honestly, it might be the best film of the year. It's not my favorite, it's not my number one, but I will not argue against somebody who tells me that they think this is the best film of 2018 so far.
So far, John Krasinski can pretty much do no wrong. I'm a big fan of his. Would have loved to see his version of Captain America. Don't get me wrong, I love Chris Evans. But he, as a director and a screenwriter for this film, just blew it out of the water for me.
So obviously this is John Krasinski's stage in this movie. He wrote, he directed, he starred. It's his first time behind the camera, and he deserves all the credit in the world for this movie. But don't forget about Emily Blunt, his real life wife. She is incredible in this film. Now, she hit a little bit of a dud period after a couple great films in the past, but she seems to kind of be ramping it back up a little bit, and her performance in this movie is out of this world. The one specific scene that always stands out to me is when she's alone in the house and she's about to give birth. And she does give birth eventually, but she's being chased by a creature. She has to hide in the bathtub, and then she ends up in the shower. That scene altogether, when she's doing that, it just shows her true performance because she's doing it all by herself. There's no one that she can act with. She's acting like there's a fake baby in her stomach and that there's something chasing her. And so those three elements is a huge part of that scene, and she's able to do it perfectly enough to where everybody in the audience believes her.
This movie, I don't know if I'd call it shocking. I would definitely describe it as stressful, nerve-wracking, and I was doing a lot of this. Oh God, no! Oh man, watching it and kind of gripping my seat, like literally just sitting up in my seat, like, oh man, because it is so quiet, literally, it's so the use of sound or lack of it, but even the little bit of sound that you do get, it's some of the best I've ever seen or heard in any movie.
So we talked about John Krasinski and directing in this movie and how it's his first attempt behind the camera, and this just isn't any other directorial debut for a director. Yes, he got his wife to star alongside him, who is one of the best working actresses in the world. But he also got two kids who are incredible in their own right, specifically the little girl. Now, I don't have her name off the top of my head, but he didn't just go out and grab the most popular young actress in the world or someone who has worked on Broadway or whatever it may be. The girl in his story was deaf. He went out and got a deaf little girl who absolutely captured the role in the story perfectly. She played the role so well. In ways, she became the heart of the story because, for the most part, it was about a dad losing the connection with his daughter, losing the connection with his son, trying to regain that. And we saw that throughout this story. And that connection specifically between Krasinski and the little girl was one of the biggest parts of the story, and her performance was a key moment in that.
I love the creatures in this movie. I don't know what their specific name is, but they are so awesome and so unique, and I've never seen anything like them. The fact that they live off of sound and everything that they do has to do with sound and they can't really see, and how intelligently John Krasinski was able to apply that to the film. Like that scene where she's underground and the water's running, but they can't hear her because the water's so loud. That is genius stuff right there. And just the design of the creatures, considering the low budget, I thought they were so amazing.
I don't know that I would consider this a horror film. I think it definitely has some horror elements to it, and I think they tried to sell it as a horror film, but I don't know if it is. It's kind of a family story and a little more sci-fi than horror, I would think. There's, like I said, there's some horror mixed in, but it's more sci-fi and more drama.
The one moment where I really got into this film was actually pretty early on, because we had seen in the trailers where the kid turns on the plane in the beginning, but we didn't know what happens in that moment. They killed this kid at the beginning of the movie. I was like, oh my goodness. And part of what makes this movie so great is what the family has to deal with after losing that child. So that moment was where I was like, man, this movie is starting off great, and it stayed great the whole way through.
The one thing I remember from this movie, and it's my least favorite part of the whole entire movie, is when John Krasinski's character has to scream in order to save his kids and ends up just being eaten, taken away, whatever you want to call it, by one of the monsters. It is so gut-wrenching.
So I had this movie at number 2 on my list, and I just came away. I really like. It's simple, but I really like this movie. I had no idea what it was going to be. I think I remember seeing the trailer. I think we were seeing something back in November. I don't remember. I had no idea what it was because it's called A Quiet Place. There's no one talking in the trailer, so I'm just okay. What is happening here? I don't know what's going on. The next trailer I saw was pretty interesting, so I said, okay, I'll go check it out, and I just went into it and was pretty blown away. It was very moving, very emotional, and all the family stuff. Like I said, as a father, all the family stuff works, and my family would never survive any of this stuff, by the way. But I really enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun, and I think by the end of the year it'll still be pretty high on my list.